And so that's where also a lot of the self-doubt comes in, right? Where if you're overcompensating and you're constantly working to please others, you start to lose track of your own needs. And so you do that, the self-doubt will start to grow from there.
In this episode, we'll be saying goodbye to imposter syndrome and eliminating stress, anxiety, shame, and self-doubt with the help of a certified life coach, speaker, and author. She's the creator of Authentically, and she's also the CEO of her own coaching company called Live Joy Your Way. Welcome to the show, Kamini. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing well. I hope you are too.
Yes, I'm doing fine and doing now even much more better that I get the opportunity to speak with you and to learn so much about things that bothers a lot of us, and we're not able to talk about it, all the time because, yeah, we don't want to talk about them. So I'm so happy that, yeah, I'm so happy that I get the opportunity to speak about this with you. And like I said before we started recording, I was like, yes, I know you're a certified coach, you're an author, you have years of experience under your belt, but it's not all of that is they are very, very important, they are essential, but it's not also as essential or as important as you going through the experience yourself. Like you don't only have the theory knowledge or the theoretical knowledge, you also have the practical knowledge by going through by yourself, growing up in a small town, in an Indian family, and that's changed your way of thinking, your thoughts, and also changed your reality at some point. So I don't know, Kamini, if you would love to, share a little bit about this with us and how that journey was like for you.
Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, one way that I think coaches work in, which is incredible, is their training. And I wholeheartedly love the training that I've been through, but you're absolutely right. That personal experience, nothing can really change that. And I mean, that's where the gold is for me personally. That I've gone through a lot of this journey myself. So I grew up in a small town in Connecticut. My parents are immigrants from India. They had come over when they were teenagers themselves. But the town that I grew up in was predominantly white. And growing up, I definitely stuck out. I had a different name. I was most definitely a different color in terms of my skin color. And as a little kid, as a 5 or 6 year old child, right? So kindergarten, first grade, that was difficult because there were times when it was very obvious that I was different. If somebody said my name in a classroom, for instance, you'd have a new teacher each year or a substitute teacher, they would mess up your name and everybody would snicker and laugh. And it was just, as a little child, experiencing that you're different or you don't belong. And my 5 or 6 year old self dealt with it, was just trying to move through it. There wasn't really the ability to process through what was happening and how I was internalizing it. And so I did. I took those moments of you don't belong or you're different, and they were internalized as like either you're not good enough or you're not you don't belong. And so then the way that I worked to overcome that was a lot of people pleasing and a lot of perfectionist tendencies, because for me, the way that I was calculating in my little brain was, if I ensured that people were happy with me or I didn't mess up, then I felt like I would belong better, or people wouldn't take as much notice of me. And so that's where also a lot of the self-doubt comes in, right? Where if you're overcompensating and you're constantly working to please others, you start to lose track of your own needs. And so you do that, the self-doubt will start to grow from there. So for me personally, that was my story into adulthood. And honestly, it wasn't until motherhood where I started seeing my own kids with the perfectionist, people pleasing tendencies, where I recognized that was coming from how I was showing up. They were learning through watching me. And so in order for me to help them shift and change and not necessarily repeat some of those beliefs about self, right? That you have to prove worthiness or you're not good enough. I needed to do my self-work, and I needed to understand where it was coming from. And that's really through my self-awareness journey that a lot of this started. from narratives that I had accumulated from when I was younger.
Yeah.
And so as I did that and did that work, that's honestly where I realized that I can now take this experience and this knowledge and this awareness, and I could create the ability to help others understand themselves on that deeper level so that they too can move forward.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I'm so happy that you got to that point of awareness where you're able to identify those traits in your children, for example, and knows, oh, this is something from me. This is, yeah, people pleasing, for example. Because when I read that, you saw your daughter dim her own light because she didn't believe her shine was good enough. And
Mm-hmm.
that must have touched you in some ways. Like, how was that like for you when you saw your daughter exhibiting some traits that you are letting go of, or you are still working on yourself?
Honestly, that was actually a difficult moment in the sense that as a parent, you really do want what's best for your children. And so when you see your child dimming themselves down, it is difficult to watch and witness. But it was also, in hindsight, a beautiful catalyst moment, because I wouldn't have gone on my own journey to figure out where it was coming from for me. And then I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in today, running this practice and helping other people understand themselves in a deeper way. So it does lean into this idea that things are always happening for us and through us, even in those challenging moments. And I do believe that by having that catalyst moment, having that mirror moment, if you will, where I was watching her kind of emulate me, that opened. It was an opening. It was an invitation to do the work, so that again it shifts my world, but it also shifts that that pattern for her, right? And it shifted the pattern for her siblings as well. But now I'm witnessing, and she actually just went off to school today for her first day of her senior year, and she is so grounded in who she is. And that's not to say teenagers don't make choices that they then regret, but she really is truly grounded in who she is, and really understands her values and understands her own worth. And that came through that process. So again, I think it was a gift in the long run.
Yes, I believe so too. Because even for that, time, or that exposure, or that revelation, or that reflection, like you said, mirror, um, we might not be speaking about it right now. You might not be doing what you're doing right now. Also, yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. So I would just love us to rewrite our stories, like you've done yours already. And I would love us to take off from people pleasing, like you've mentioned a couple of times already. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I know people pleasing could come up like from your story, growing up in the kind of household you grew up in, being, being treated or feeling like, a minority, for example, and trying to show out that, yes, I am worthy, and, trying to prove it to the world, basically. But regardless of anything that might have led us to be people pleasing, what can we do in order to let go of that trait or that character?
Yeah. So one of the things that I often talk to clients about is taking some time to figure out what your authentic self needs are. Because when we are people pleasers, generally speaking, I'm not saying this is across the board, but for the most part, when we lean into people pleasing, we give to identify what it is that we need, because we are so over consumed with ensuring that other people's needs or their desires are met. So if we're trying to break the pattern of people pleasing, one of the very first things that we need to take some time to figure out are what are our needs. Like, for instance, the need to be respected, the need to be heard, the need to be able to use my own voice, the need to be seen within a conversation, the need to be able to share my opinions. Those are all examples of authentic self needs. There are plenty more that one could identify. But as a people pleaser, if you're willing and wanting to break that pattern, it's taking the time to really recognize what are your specific needs, and then being able to start into those and presencing those on a daily basis. So for instance, not just doing what somebody else asks of you without checking in with yourself first. So a very simple example is if you and a friend are going out to, I was actually just talking to a client before we hopped on, and one of the things that we're really working on is her voicing her opinion about where they go to dinner. People pleasers generally will say something like, "Oh, I don't know, whatever you want." But that's really probably not true. There's probably some type of food that you'd like. So it's even exercising it in the smallest ways where you're able to say, this is actually what I would prefer. This is what I need right now. And being able to start voicing that with friends, family, coworkers, that starts breaking that pattern.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, you have to check in with yourself first. Like, get the input from the external world, from people around you, but check in with yourself first. If it's in alignment, then yes. If not, then no.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And learning that no does not mean that you are doing something wrong. It just means that you're saying something doesn't work for me right now.
Yeah, but sometimes we rather fear of being rejected or fear of being called difficult or fear of being, you
Mm-hmm.
know, yeah, I've just been left out basically because we say no to things. How do
Yes.
you deal with this?
Oh, this is so funny because I literally was just on this conversation with this person. We were just talking about the fact that the fear is the fear of missing out. I'm going to be left
Mm,
behind, or the fear of people being upset that you've said no.
mm,
It comes back to what's in alignment with what's meaningful to you, right? Really checking in with your own value system and your own, again, we come back to your own needs and recognizing that if people don't honor, if they're going to be upset with you because you're saying something doesn't work for you, then that's theirs to handle, not yours, right? As a people pleaser, you want to make them feel better. The truth of the matter is, they're responsible for their reaction to what you've said. So it's
mm.
learning and really exercising that muscle. In terms of the fear of missing out, that's an internal dialogue. It's, am I really missing out on something that I didn't want in the first place? It's
Mm.
the narrative. We have to just spin that one around, right? We have to recognize that, well, I'm not missing out on something if I didn't want it or it didn't align with me in the first place. It, I can't miss out on something that wasn't really aligned with me, is
Yeah,
at the end of the day the
that's
truth.
true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that. I mean, it all boils down to what you said earlier, like, checking with yourself, know your values, know what you might be missing out on, or something that might hurt you if you miss out on it, for example. And if that particular situation or that particular thing is not something of relevance to you, then yeah, forget about it.
Yeah, you're not really missing out on something if it wasn't something that actually was aligning with you in the first place.
Yeah, that's true. Wow, oh, that's good. I mean, it's one thing to say it, and one is another thing to put into action. But I believe with the way you've explained it, I believe one could take baby steps or big steps to let go of people pleasing and become even much more happier. Because I believe once we are able to let go of people pleasing, be able to find ourselves, be able to know our authentic self, like your company or one of your creations, authentic me, be able to know what
Mhm.
our authentic self is actually is. Yeah. And then the next now I would like, sorry, please.
I was just going to say, I love what you just said, and I want to just highlight that if we can.
Mm,
Sometimes it's not about the really big steps, it's the small steps that we can take that will compound to become the larger changes.
mm. Yes, that's true. Yeah. I mean, that's very relevant because sometimes, I mean, we could have this conversation right now and I'll just leave and say, I'm going to take a giant step and change this and change that. And at the end of the day, I feel like, oh, I lost basically because I did not really take the time
Yeah.
to know the smallest thing I can do right now to, yeah, to make a change.
Yeah.
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 Yes. Yes. So well, now we've dealt with people pleasing a bit. I would love us to talk about something that affects a lot of us. Like it affects me, it affects a lot of my friends also out there, and that's imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
Sometimes I want you to enlighten me on this, but my own little understanding on it is basically sometimes you achieve something, you get something and you believe you don't deserve it, or you're a
Hmm.
thief or something, or you don't. I mean, you stole that opportunity, for example. But I would love you to shed more light on it and explain what it actually means to have imposter syndrome.
Yeah, usually the way that I explain imposter syndrome is to say it's the self doubt. It's the self doubt, and it comes from the inner critic. The inner critic saying things exactly like you just said. I don't deserve it, or that was a fluke, or people will figure out that I'm just a fake or I'm a fraud and I didn't actually do the work. And really what that is it's our inner critic telling us a false belief. And so then it's about getting curious, where does that false belief come from? And again, a lot of times we can track it back to either something that happened when we were younger or something that happened, like for instance, a lot of adults, like older adults, more mature adults who are moving forward in their career, they start moving up the ladder in their business world, and they'll get a promotion and they have so much self-doubt around an imposter syndrome around getting that promotion that some people will figure out that they didn't actually deserve that promotion. And what we've been able to track it back to is maybe an experience that they had, again, maybe when they were younger, but also maybe earlier in their career where they had an experience or somebody said something to them that got internalized as a false belief about self, that they might have gotten, maybe they got their first job and somebody said, oh, you were lucky to get that first job. And that got internalized for them to make it mean that, oh, they didn't actually deserve it. It was just luck of the draw. But what happened was it was internalized. It kind of went into the system. And that's the thing that's operating in the subconscious. So the way that we work through that is we bring that thought to the awareness and recognize that's just a limiting belief or a false belief or somebody else's narrative. And we actually start asking what's actually true about you. Well, wow, you've done this to move forward in your career. You've accomplished this like this. This is who you are. These are your values. These are your strengths. We come back to what's actually true, and we down this false belief that you don't deserve it, or again, it was just a fluke. We were able to see that that's just a lie that our inner critic is telling us.
Yeah, we have to like look down within us and say, yeah, actually, track what you've done in the past. Like, yeah, you're not blowing your trumpet, but you did this and did that and did that, to get to this position in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's not blowing your own trumpet, right? And to be fair, sometimes we have to blow our own trumpet because we really do need to celebrate ourselves. It's not celebrating ourselves to the detriment or putting somebody else down, right? That's the difference between arrogance and just actually acknowledging what we're celebrating. And it's not just about the accomplishment. It's also looking at who we were and how we showed up. And I always say that when we're dealing with things like imposter syndrome, it's push yourself to not just look at the things you've done, but who you are as you're doing those things. Like, so for instance, I completed this project at work. That's great. Amazing. Celebrate that. And then also say, and how did I show up? Well, I showed up as a creative person. I showed up resilient to deal with the challenges that came up during the project. I was patient, right? So we go not just through what we accomplished, but we also go through who we were and how we showed up. And those two things together start breaking down that imposter syndrome and breaking down the inner critic.
Yeah, break down the inner critic. Yes, I'm going to with that. But you think imposter syndrome leads to self-sabotage or self-sabotage?
It absolutely can, because what self-sabotage is it's, for me, the way that I break it down is it's a way that we control the fallout. So if we're afraid that something is going to happen, we will, subconsciously, most often, will end up hurting the situation before we can be hurt by it. So a lot of times we'll see this, like for instance, in relationships where our relationship is going really well, and then somebody will find themselves maybe cheating on their partner. And they say, why the heck did I just do that? And it's because they're almost afraid that they will get hurt eventually. So they want to control the fallout. So they take an action, not consciously, subconsciously, to sabotage themselves, not because they want to really be hurt, but because then at least they know it's coming. Same thing happens with imposter syndrome. They self-doubt and they don't want somebody to quote unquote find them out. So they go and take action that, if it's, let's talk about career, they will self-sabotage within their career so they can control the fallout once again. It's almost like a protection mechanism. It's a part of us that's trying to protect us from failure. So we self-sabotage.
Yeah, and I believe once we're trying to do this, then we prevent ourselves from growing or progressing in life. We just stay at a point because we feel that's the safest point I can ever be in my whole entire life. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's this paradox, right? It's a part that's trying to protect us, and yet it's the same part that keeps us from growing.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, you made mention of a point that I would love us to even go deeper into, and that's about this imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, or self-doubt in relationships. Um, how do we deal with this? As a partner or as someone who has a partner that is going through this kind of um imposter syndrome and self-doubt in the relationship.
I am a firm believer in empathy and not sympathy. So there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. Empathy is really giving room for the other person to feel what they're feeling and acknowledging it. As a partner or as a friend or somebody who cares about somebody going through that, it is about being empathetic, sitting with them, getting curious with them, what's actually happening, allowing them to talk about their feelings rather than pushing it away and saying, oh, no, no, don't worry about that. You're fine. I know many of us mean well when we say that, but what we're also doing is not acknowledging that certain emotions are present for our loved one or our friend. And so it's really important to give them the space to have their emotions and to acknowledge their emotions rather than trying to just push right through them. Because when we try to push right through them, it's almost a form of experiential avoidance. And so what happens is we're almost giving them the message again that they're wrong for having those feelings. And feelings themselves are always valid. It's just behaviors are not always valid, right? But we have to allow ourselves to have our feelings because at the end of the day, they're just data packets. The feelings and emotions are giving us information on what we need or what value might not be being met in a given moment. And so it gives us information of maybe an action we would want to take. And it's based on, wow, my feelings are giving me that information.
Mm. Yeah, I really like what you just said right now. Like our feelings are valid. It's our habits that we have to check. How do you react to those feelings of yours? How do you respond to
Yes,
them?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that comes up a lot with anger, for instance, right? Your
Mm.
emotion of anger is totally valid. However, the behavior of rage, not so much.
No, 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 not so much. Yeah. You have the right to feel angry, but how you actually react or respond to that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the problem.
exactly. That's exactly right.
Yes, yeah. And talking about progressing in life in our relationships also after we've let go of imposter syndrome or self-sabotage or self-doubt. Yes, I
Mhm.
think there are some other limiting beliefs that that has been embedded into our memories or our brain because I don't know, our upbringing, for example, or whatever reasons, basically. So I don't
Mhm.
know, Kamini, if you could, enlighten us on some of these limiting beliefs that we might not even know about that are limiting us and how we could let go of them.
So many of us have different limiting beliefs, but a lot of the common ones are the belief of I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy. Those are like the really common ones that we end up dealing with. And in terms of letting them go, a couple things. One is it's not about pushing the thought away. It's about acknowledging that that belief is there and then coming back home to your values, what's meaningful to you, and also what's actually true about you. Because many times those beliefs have come from, again, experiences or messages that we received. So they're not always from a big T trauma, which it can actually happen. Like, so for instance, if somebody's abused as a child, that I would consider as a big T trauma. That would create a false belief or a false narrative, a limiting belief around maybe being lovable or worthy. However, there are other ways that we experience this. Again, going back to even my example, that was not a big T trauma. Getting somewhat made fun of at school, I'm not excusing that behavior, but it's also not, it's a smaller T trauma, so to speak. But I still internalized that and it became a certain false belief about self. And so, what we really need to do is become aware of where those things have come from. And then we start challenging and saying, well, what's actually true about how I show up? What are my core values? What are my core beliefs? Who am I as a person, as a being? Because at the end of the day, what we're hoping to get people to, or at least what I hope to get people to, is that worthiness, for instance, doesn't come from the things that we do. We are already worthy by our mere essence, by our being, by our existence. That's an
Mm.
innate, that's a given. And a lot of times it just gets covered up by these messages or experiences that we have.
Yes. We are already worthy just as we are, basically. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not our
Mm-hmm.
being, it's our rights. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. But when you talk about, yes, you're already worthy as you are. We sometimes, experience some things or situations where we start to feel ashamed of ourselves, maybe
Mm.
because of our upbringing or
Yep.
something that we've done in the past. How do we then, align both of them? I am worthy and I
Yeah.
feel so much shame right this moment. I feel so
Yeah.
so weird.
I love that question because I think so many of us experience shame and we don't even realize that we keep continually in it's internalized shame. We continually shame ourselves. And the thing that I'll say about shame is that it happens when there is an experience or something happens where it has either been dismissed that it happened or it's dismissed, it's denied that it happened, or there's some form of gaslighting where it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad, or you're misremembering that situation. Those elements will contribute to shame being experienced, right? That's when shame is basically born and then it continues to grow. And we continue to experience shame until we take the time to actually witness what happened. We speak about it, we talk about it, and we work through it. So, for example, you know, in terms of shame, one of the things that I know that I shamed myself for a very long time was just about being different. And a lot of it was never talking about some of the things that were said to me because it was, well, for me, I didn't want to burden my parents with it. They were busy, they were working. I didn't talk about it with friends because I was embarrassed. And so what ended up happening was it was all kept inside, which meant that it went unwitnessed. But while keeping it inside, I routinely shamed myself for being this different, weird, odd person. And so until I was willing to start talking about it and having it witnessed, not just by other people, but really by myself, just naming it and saying, wow, that's so ridiculously mean what these people said to you. And it's also not true. That was when the unshaming could start. And we
Mm.
can't really work through these false beliefs until we unshame ourselves, until we go through that process. And that's why I routinely say to people that understanding yourself and really coming home to yourself is the foundation for all the other things that we want, whether it be professionally or personally, because we have to get to that core of what are we internally shaming ourselves for? What are we internally saying to ourselves that's holding us back?
Yeah. Understanding yourself and really coming home to yourself
Mm-hmm.
makes you understand or makes you know what to do in order to liberate yourself and to become who you are meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, let go of shame, let go of um you know self-doubt or imposter syndrome and all of that. Yeah. and
Mm-hmm.
and and
Mm-hmm.
and through all of this journey of becoming a better being and trying to find our authentic selves, how does self-compassion help us on this part of self-discovery?
Yeah. Self-compassion is such a vital part because what self-compassion is really exemplifying and kind of amplifying, rather, not exemplifying, amplifying, is kindness over judgment. And so what we're saying with self-compassion is, as I go through this journey, as I'm learning these things about myself, I'm not going to get caught up in judgment of self and saying things like, oh, I wasted all these years and I should have known better, because that just takes us right back down that rabbit hole. And instead, it's leaning into kindness and saying, wow, that was really hard, or that was really difficult. And this is what I can take from that experience. And this is how I can grow. And this is what I learned. Self compassion also looks at the fact that there is a sense of common humanity. We are humans. We are trying to all figure this stuff out. Other
Mm.
people have gone through similar experiences. They've gone through challenges similar to what we have. And so it's about recognizing that we're not isolated in these experiences. We're not weird or odd for having them, but instead allowing ourselves, again, that kindness of recognizing that we are just part of this whole common humanity. And then it's about, what am I doing in my present moment? We could sit and ruminate over the past, but that doesn't get us anywhere, in the sense of we can't undo the past. We can learn from it, but it's, I'm here in this moment right now, so what do I want to do with this information, rather than continually trying to relive and repattern the past.
Yeah, let's go with the past, don't relive it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kamini, I've learned so much from you in this conversation so far. Thank you so much. You've helped us, or you helped me personally to understand more about imposter syndrome, what to do to let go of self-doubt, what to do to, ensure that I don't self-sabotage myself and all of that. But I know that there are people out there who still have more questions to ask, who would like to, get across to you to maybe get the benefits from your coaching services and also to, maybe just work with you basically. So what's the best way to do this? What's the best way to reach out to you?
So they can find me on the web at kaminiwood.com, or I'm
Mm.
also on Instagram and Facebook with the handle It's Authentic Me.
It's authentic me. Yes. The link to your website will be in the show notes of this episode. Links to all your social medias are also on your website. I'm going to encourage everyone. I encourage everyone out there to, click on the link, copy the link, reach out to Kamini. Just read out, even wonderful things that she does also for other people out there. And you don't know, maybe it could be the solution to what you're looking for towards, letting go of those shame that you have or the self-sabotage that you've been experiencing or the imposter syndrome. Thank you so much, Kamini. I really appreciate this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
Hey there, podcast enthusiasts. Are you ready to add a little sparkle to your day? If you're loving the insightful conversations and captivating stories on Mirror Talk Podcast, here's a friendly nudge to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the empowering messages and thought-provoking discussions we bring to your ears. But wait, there's more. We're all about spreading positivity and inspiration, and you can be a part of it too. How? By sharing the love with your friends and family. Share this episode with your loved ones, and let's create a ripple effect of empowerment and growth together. And hey, if you've been enjoying what you hear, why not take a moment to leave us a glowing 5-star review? Your feedback fuels our passion to keep delivering content that resonates with you. So hit that subscribe button, share the love, and leave us a review. Let's keep the conversation going and spread the Mirror Talk magic far and wide. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, your support means the world to us.